Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode. I am joined by a wonderful, lovely, glowingly tanned guest, Molly, today, who is based over in Bali, which is giving me slightly envious vibes, but I'm also loving it because I feel still connected to being in Bali. Molly is a LinkedIn trainer and business consultant, helping coaches and entrepreneurs to find and close high-ticket clients using inbound and organic strategies. And one thing that I saw on your website when I was having a little look earlier was that you said no ads, no cold outreach, and no ick, which is music to my ears because that is one of the things that I remember having so much fear around when I first ventured into the world of entrepreneurship and selling. Was like, I don't want to send cold messages and sales feels icky, and how do I navigate that? So I'm looking forward to delving into all things LinkedIn, which I'm really excited about because I use LinkedIn myself, but we've not had a LinkedIn specialist on the podcast before. So thank you so much. Please give us a little bit introduction before we dive into a bit more about what it is that you do with your clients and your business.
Sure. So thank you so much, firstly, for having me. So honored to be here. A bit about me. So I escaped corporate about a year ago, actually just under. This time last year in November, end of November, early December, I quit my corporate job. I was a marketing exec, hustling really hard, and I just moved to Bali and realized that even though I was in Bali, I was still working really hard, so I couldn't really enjoy anything. And it was just super kind of like big choices to be made. I had no freedom, which I know is what you obviously focus on. And there was just none of that in my life. And then that's when I started thinking, okay, so I am currently making multi-million-pound dollars for other people using launch strategies that I know I could use for myself. Why don't I give it a try? So eventually I took the lead and did it. And then I've just been applying those same launch strategies, marketing strategies to my own personal brand and to the brands of my clients now as well.
Amazing. So I feel like what was the moment that you thought, do you know what, I've had enough. There's got to be something better. There's got to be more out there for me. Like, what took you from sitting at that desk, working in a corporate company, to being in Bali and setting up kind of a new life there?
So it's actually, being in Bali, coming to Bali, it was kind of like the middle step. It wasn't one then the other. It was like I was traveling and living, working remotely in corporate in Europe before, but then I still was like, I need more freedom. I want to kind of surf every day and live the life that I thought I'd have when I was traveling in Europe. Moved to Bali, and then still didn't have it. And I started to realize, like, well, wait a minute. I don't think the problem here is where I live. I think the problem here is how much I work.
Yes.
And the actual kind of click point for me was my partner, now husband, proposed to me. And I remember thinking kind of, oh my gosh, I haven't spent any time with this poor man for months. Why does he want to marry me? All I've been doing is working. I've been so stressed out. And that for me was kind of when I really started to realign what my values are and were, and started to consider trying to build a business and build a life for us that was more focused on having some time and having a life that was more than just working really hard and making loads of money for other people.
Yeah, I love that. And I guess it's quite often in those moments of what's the word, sort of extremities, I guess, where you're like, actually, no, it's not all about hustling really hard. It's not about sacrificing my time. It comes back to those important things of the relationship, of being able to surf, of having more freedom, and actually really making what feel like quite big changes, I guess, at the time. But ultimately, as you say, that align back with your values. And that's something that comes up a lot in these conversations on the podcast, is actually finding what those values are and then living life in alignment with those values, because that's ultimately where you're going to feel happiest, calmest, most connected. So I love that you mentioned that. And then from like a LinkedIn perspective, was most of the work that you were doing before in corporate focused on LinkedIn, or was it the more general kind of launch strategies and marketing strategies that you then decided to kind of focus more on LinkedIn as kind of your niche?
So I was working mainly within inbound marketing. So for anyone who's listening that doesn't know the difference between inbound and outbound marketing is anything where your leads or your potential clients come to you. So they reach out to you, they try to buy from you, they're actively seeking you out. And the way that you present yourself in a way that they would do this is through really strategic content, strategic messaging, showing up in the right way on the right platforms in various different manners, whether that be through engagement strategies or through your own content. That's inbound marketing. Now, outbound marketing is like ads, paid ads, influencer marketing, all those paid strategies. Also, outbound is cold outreach emails and stuff like that. So my speciality was always inbound. And that's why, as I have mentioned on my site, as you picked up on, is it's very much not what I teach. Isn't the icky kind of growth on scale, sending loads of messages to people that are not filtered and just having those real spammy kind of outbound techniques. That's not my strategy at all, what I teach at all. And the reason I chose LinkedIn was because towards the end of my corporate career, I was working on product launches where LinkedIn was somewhere that we would do the launch. And LinkedIn would always be the number one most reliable source of organic inbound leads, time and time and time again. And it got to the point, especially, towards late 2021, where Facebook ads, they just were not working. They weren't working for anyone, but they definitely weren't working for us. And it was such a struggle, and the ad spend was just increasing ridiculously fast. Ad spend per customer. So there was a lot more focus given to the organic strategies, like the LinkedIn strategies. And we kept seeing that the LinkedIn organic strategies were pulling in way more leads, and they would be a lot higher quality leads, meaning they would convert more into an actual sale. And the best thing is they wouldn't have had this massive ad spend behind them. So that is why when I was deciding, okay, I'm going to be a consultant, what is something that I want to focus on? Obviously, being in marketing, I know that it's so important to have a niche. And I didn't want to just come in here and be like, oh, I'm a marketing consultant. I knew I needed to have a niche. I knew I needed to pick something to focus on and build from there, ideally, but start with something and scale from there. And that is why I chose LinkedIn, was because I knew it worked. And I knew that I wanted to feel an alignment with what I was offering and feel that I knew that I would get results for my clients when they implemented the strategies that I taught and teach now. And that for me was the biggest driver. Was, yes, I could have done, full stack marketing consulting, but what felt best to me was the LinkedIn, because it works simply.
It's so interesting with LinkedIn, because it's like, I think it's evolved. Well, I would say it's evolved quite a lot, even in the last sort of 4 years, maybe, from being quite like a business and serious platform to more and more people using it to share personal stories, share personal photos. Like, it's more, I see more of like those journal style posts as well, of like longer form versus, the shorter form kind of statistics type post. And I just wonder, based on your experience and knowledge, whether there is a wildly different or actually pretty similar strategy to, say, Instagram and LinkedIn when it comes to selling. So let's say me as a business and mindset coach, working with female entrepreneurs, I have Instagram and I use LinkedIn. Now, I do have a slightly different approach, but I'd be love to hear your thoughts on posting and selling on LinkedIn versus Instagram.
So I think the main thing to consider here is that LinkedIn is a business network, and it's the only business network, which is why it's so powerful. It's where people go to make business. They show up there ready to buy. They show up there ready to take action. Instagram is more of a social network. It's a distraction network. It's where people go to scroll, to just turn off their mind, whereas LinkedIn definitely doesn't have that. So with that in mind, you want to be always communicating with your audience in the mindset that they are in at that moment. So on Instagram, you don't want to be, super businessy. You don't want to be that, because that's not going to convert. But on LinkedIn, likewise, you don't want to move away from your personal brand. So it's about finding that sweet spot in the middle where you are being professional, because you're actually meeting your clients when they are in a different mindset. They're on LinkedIn, so they're in a very different mindset than if they were to be, say, on Instagram in the evening when they're at home. It's completely different for them, their experience. But for the way that they see you needs to be the same, but just slightly, the messaging just needs to slightly be altered to hit right, given the platform that you're on. So with that in mind, I would say that there is space, and it's definitely worth repurposing content across all platforms. I'm a massive advocate for creating as much freedom in your time as possible by, repurposing and doing strategies that will mean that you don't have to constantly be doing content for all these different channels. But what I always advocate for as well is to make sure that when you're creating your content, you're doing it for the network that's actually making you money, for the platform that's actually making you money. And then the other ones are kind of repurposed based off of that. So instead of trying to create, bespoke videos for TikTok and Instagram, and then also really long form, in-depth professional copy for LinkedIn posts, look at what's actually making you money and build on that, and then use that content and repurpose it as best you can on the other platforms as well. And that is how you can actually scale from a place of what's working, and really start to build your own personal brand and build authority on the place, on the network that is making you money, and eventually will be able to scale. You'll be able to scale a lot quicker from there.
Yeah, I think that's so true and such a good point, because it could be so, and I speak from my own experience, it's like that feeling of, I should be posting on TikTok and Instagram and LinkedIn. And it's like, actually go an inch wide and a mile deep versus a mile wide and an inch deep, actually carve out a name and yourself on that core platform where your ideal client is most present and active, and then absolutely have a presence on another platform, but don't necessarily try and do everything all at once, because as you say, it just doesn't work. I hear quite a few myths around LinkedIn. I wonder whether you can myth bust for us. Well, I think there's something around, I follow quite a few people on LinkedIn who have an incredible presence, who are marketers, who are social media strategists. And I just find it fascinating to see how they post, the sort of content and advice that they give. But I do see fairly often that these people have posted religiously 5 times a day on LinkedIn to grow the subscriber numbers that they have. Now, I'm very aware that subscriber numbers don't equal sales. I don't know if they're necessarily doing it for that reason. But do you advise your clients, and do you yourself post X number of times per day as a way of, helping create a higher chance of success?
No. So that is one of the things I love most about LinkedIn. And let me just touch on a few things there. So I just want to break down your point a little bit. So the people that have the content creators on LinkedIn, the algorithm treats them differently than it does for any account that has under 10,000 followers. So if you are trying to replicate and use the strategies that these people teach that are working for them, it's different for you unless you're at that stage of growth. Because the algorithm will actually push out content creators' posts more frequently. So because of that, they will be getting more engagement, even when they're posting, a couple of times a day, because of the way the algorithm is set up to favor them. And this is quite a new change. So that's something always to bear in mind that I tell everyone is, yes, by all means, follow the influencers. They give some great advice, but take everything with a pinch of salt, because what's working for them may not necessarily work for you. And one of the best things about LinkedIn as a creator, as a personal brand, is that it's not as savage as Instagram. You don't need to post, all day on your stories or every single day in your content, on your reels, or post it themselves like you do on Instagram to really maintain that following and to grow your following. People on LinkedIn are not going to unfollow you if you don't post for, a few days. They're
Yeah.
they're much more loyal. And
Mm,
in terms of impressions and engagement, the strategy on LinkedIn is you give your audience what they're asking for. So as you start to grow, you'll realize that people are really starting to engage on your content, which means it's time for you to start posting more. But I definitely wouldn't recommend to anyone just starting out on LinkedIn, post 5 times a day now, because it's just going to be overwhelming for the network that you already have.
mm,
And it's not going to get the engagement. You'll be giving away everything, and hardly anyone will be seeing it. So rather just start slow, start to really investigate the platform, and spend the time that you would normally spend posting every day on engaging with people, on seeing who
mm.
the existing influencers are in your field, and piggybacking off their content. What's working for them, why is it working, who's engaging on their content, and just taking all of those bits of information to build your own network on LinkedIn so that when you do post, the right people are seeing it and you're going to actually start getting traction as well.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing to mention because it is so much about the engagement. But one of the things I always sort of remember is like, don't post and ghost, which I always think is quite a good phrase. It's like, don't show up, do a post, and then, don't do anything else on the platform. Actually have conversations, network with people, engage, not for the sake of doing it, but more so for the idea of having a conversation and adding your opinion. And, yes, you want to, increase your visibility so that you are beginning to see us. People are beginning to see you as someone that does have a presence on LinkedIn. So, yeah, I think that's really nice advice because there can be that question mark around how much do I need to be posting and where do I, where, what, how. So yeah, that's a good piece of advice, and also links nicely to the whole idea of having that freedom lifestyle. That's why you moved to Bali, is to have more freedom. So if you were sat posting 5 times a day, getting caught up in the algorithms and what you should all have to be doing, then it just sort of totally counteracts that vision behind why you moved there. So I'd love to touch on that a little bit. What does greater freedom look like to you? You said that was one of the reasons why you changed things around and started like a new chapter in your life basically this time last year. So I know that you're a surfer, which is so cool. I feel like that's like a dream of mine to be one of those cool surfer chicks, but I'm absolutely terrified of big waves. So I have fun with like foam boards, about 50 meters in, and that's about as far as I go. But what does your kind of day to day look like? And I'd love for you to paint a bit of a picture to us and the listeners about that.
Yeah. So greater freedom to me is all about having the choice. So when the waves
Mm,
are really good, you're right, I am a surfer, but I'm a longboarder. So you can be a surfer chick and still catch the small waves and just longboard and be happy.
yeah,
Cross stepping on your longboard. That's also a vibe.
I
That's
think
that's
that's
my
even
vibe.
cooler.
I'm here for it, and that's like that. I love that. I love that life. And small waves, yeah, is definitely what I would always prefer to go for. Um, so yeah, I mean, ideally for me, what that looks like is greater freedom is being able to choose. The waves are really good this week or today, so I'm going to surf for 4 hours, and then I'm going to work in a couple of days' time for a little bit longer because I can. Or looking at my client calls that I've got scheduled in the week and looking at the surf report or the surf forecast and being able to make the choice there because I can. And it's just being able to create that lifestyle around what I actually want to do and what gives me a sense of fulfillment. So, I mean,
Mm.
my ideal day would be wake up, meditate, go surfing for a few hours, come back home, have some breakfast. I love it in Bali because there's all the fresh fruit everywhere. It's amazing.
Yes.
Have papaya and peanut butter for anyone who hasn't done that. It's
I
amazing.
was
I really
actually going to
recommend.
say, do you like papaya? Because it's one of the fruits that I do not like.
Oh, have I lost you?
Oh, I think, are we back?
There we go.
Sorry, I think there's a little bit of a delay, but I can still hear you.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No,
I think
no,
we're
don't
back.
worry.
I feel that we're good. Um, so where were we at?
Um,
hopefully you can cut that bit.
yeah, no, all good. Papaya and peanut butter.
Okay. Yes, so I totally recommend papaya and peanut butter for anyone who hasn't tried it already. That's like my go-to breakfast. So I would come home and have that, and then do some work for a few hours, and then normally have a bit of a break, siesta, maybe go to do some yoga, and then have client calls in the afternoon and do my posting on LinkedIn and my kind of strategy for growing my business and growing my LinkedIn network and also converting the existing network during the afternoons as well. And that's my day. Really nice early night, and then same again the next day.
That just sounds the dream, and it reconfirms why I need to come back to Bali. I feel like I don't need any more reasons why, but it's good to have this conversation to kind of reaffirm that. With people that are listening that are maybe don't have a presence on LinkedIn and are more focused on Instagram, but are thinking about, okay, maybe actually there is an opportunity for me to move over to LinkedIn and start kind of testing things out. What would be one piece of advice as to kind of where to start with, opening up more of a presence on LinkedIn?
So start with your ideal client. So your target, ideal client is another word for avatar, or your target audience, and look at them and look at, okay, so you have the, say, you know who they are. Maybe it's a working woman in her early 40s, possibly has kids, lives in the UK, has hobbies like yoga. So the way that you would show up to speak to that person on Instagram would be different to how you'd speak to the same person on LinkedIn. So my advice on when to start is, instead of just diving into it, first go back to your ideal client worksheet, go back to your ideal client kind of thought process document if you have one, and think, how am I going to approach this person on LinkedIn, given that they are going to be in a different space when they're on this platform? How can I tweak my messaging so that you're not tweaking yourself, you're not tweaking your personal brand whatsoever? All you're doing is you're tweaking the way you approach your ideal clients and the way you approach your messaging, so that it's more in alignment with the way that they are showing up on LinkedIn. Just because that, then if you start from there, then you grow from that place, then you're really clear of how you're showing up on LinkedIn and why you are doing it. And it just makes the whole process in terms of, creating content, writing your about section, really launching your personal brand on LinkedIn so much easier, because you know who you are on LinkedIn as well as who you are as a personal brand.
I love that you said don't tweak yourself, but tweak the messaging, because it reminds me of, it's one of those funny things. It's like comes down to mindset, but one of the biggest blocks I had in my business journey was the first post that I did on LinkedIn once I'd trained as a coach and I had my coaching business up and running, and I'd literally been qualified probably for about 4 months at this point, and I hadn't mentioned anything on LinkedIn because I was so scared of what other people would say or what other people would think, which was ridiculous because I had clients, I had an Instagram, I was a qualified coach, but it was that fear that we have because it's like, oh, it's a more professional network and there's different, a whole different community there. And it's like, actually, it's an amazing, obviously, I don't need to preach to the choir, but it's an amazing platform of opportunity. And I just had this realization. I was like, I'm literally sabotaging my own success because I'm not showing up on this platform. And I think the fear, or part of the fear, came around like, how do I show up and what words do I need to use? And is there a different language I need to kind of learn? But it's not about that. It's, as you say, it's just tweaking the person that you're speaking to because of the headspace that they're in on that platform versus when they're in their pajamas at home on a Friday evening type thing.
Yeah, and I think it is that kind of block that you had is something that so many of my clients come with me. They're like, they have that. They're like, oh, Molly, I know so many people on LinkedIn, and I used to work with them, and they're gonna judge me. And it's like, everyone's gonna judge you. It doesn't matter if it's on LinkedIn or it's on Instagram. Like, if you're putting yourself out of your comfort zone and you are really, really kind of changing the way that you want to live your life, and you're going against everything that everyone else believes in around you, then people are going to judge you. It doesn't matter if it's on LinkedIn or Instagram. Maybe on Instagram they won't tell you, um, but or maybe on LinkedIn they won't tell you. But the point is, like, it's going to happen, and I think it's such a
Yeah.
mindset. That's why mindset is so important in,
Mm,
growing your own business and being an entrepreneur. Is the mindset just shifts of being okay with the fact that people are going to judge you and do it anyway, and then just embrace the fact that for everyone that judges you from your past, there's going to be so many people that are cheering you on, that will come
yeah.
into your life and that are in a similar situation as you, and that is so worth it.
100%. And one of the things, just speaking about mindset, 'cause it's such a, as you said, such a key part, if not the biggest part of growing a successful business. I know you mentioned that you do your meditation in the morning. Are there any other sort of your favorite mindset practices that you do often, or that you kind of continuously go back to? I'd love to hear.
Oh gosh, yeah. How long do you have? No. Um, so I journal in the evenings.
Yeah.
Big on journaling, like right before bed. Gratitude journaling
Mm.
has had the most profound impact on how I sleep, and also just how I wake up in the morning. Gratitude journaling and planning, kind of manifestation journaling as well, in the evenings, and
Mm.
meditating in the mornings. And then also I am learning to play the harmonium at the moment, which
Ooh.
is kind of the base of kirtan, which is a practice of singing mantra and
Oh,
playing the
wow.
harmonium. And it's really a grounding, magical experience that my beautiful
Mm.
friends in Bali got me into, and that's slowly but surely becoming my main thing that just brings me that sense of calm and grounding throughout the day. If I need, if I've got a big call or something like that, and I really want to just check back in with myself, it's that.
That sounds amazing. I love that you found something that really feels so aligned to you as well. Because I think, when we're doing these mindset practices, it's like, oh, I'll do this because I feel like it's what successful business owners do. And actually having, yes, I'm a massive journaling advocate as well, and meditation. I do tapping, which I absolutely love. But I can totally imagine how having an element of like the music and the sound healing is so calming and grounding. I've only done a couple of sound baths before, but I've absolutely loved them. And it's always on like my mental to-do list of like, oh, I could probably do with booking another one of those in. So I'm definitely gonna have a little Google about that afterwards. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I mean, singing mantra and everything for me is so new. I never
Mm,
sung mantra or sung before in my
mm,
life. So it's kind of being okay with being really bad at something as well is really
yes.
good for me, I think. Just, pushing those boundaries constantly.
Mm. The thing
Yeah.
that comes to mind for me when you say that is ecstatic dance. Have you
Mm.
done it? Do you do it? What's your relationship like with ecstatic dance?
I think that there's ecstatic dance in the rest of the world, and then there's ecstatic dance in Bali. Um,
Yeah.
very different levels. I mean, for anyone who has done ecstatic dance in Bali will know that it's very ecstatic. It can get very wild. And I mean, I'm all down for dancing and getting a bit wild. But I mean, I don't know if I'd be down to do ecstatic dance all the time in Bali per se.
No.
It's very intense, but I
Yeah.
do love a bit of dancing. Have you
Yeah.
been?
I think
I
I'll
get the
stick with
sense that
dancing in the
you've
kitchen.
been. Yeah,
Dancing in the
same.
kitchen. I just think I love the idea of it. I get it, but I just picture myself looking like an absolute lemon in the back, having no idea what to do and feeling very awkward. So I've yet to build up the courage to go, let alone do it in Bali.
Yeah, I would say if anyone's kind of wanting to experiment with the ecstatic dance thing, maybe do a couple before you go to one in Bali, because they are
Yeah.
full on amazing, beautiful, so much energy, but very, very, for lack of a better word, sexual. I mean,
Yeah.
that is what they are. Yes.
Well, who knew that our LinkedIn strategy conversation would lead to kind of sexual ecstatic dancing in Bali? That's why
I
we have an open
know.
conversation.
Exactly.
Okay, Molly, well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been so great to talk to you. I feel like I feel like we could have a whole nother podcast conversation about everything, but I've really, really enjoyed it, and appreciate your time. So please let us know where we can find you, anything that you want to share or promote, and I will leave your link in the show notes as well.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn, surprisingly.
Yeah.
It's Molly Stovold, Stovold. And at the moment, so I'm not sure when this podcast will go live, but I'm fully booked for one-to-one, and my group is also full until 2023. So I'm right now enrolling one-to-one clients for 2023, starting in mid-January. So if you're
Amazing.
interested in working with me, I would love to hear from you ASAP so that I can get you booked in and make sure that I have time to squeeze you in at a time that works for you.
Amazing, super, super exciting. And I will leave all of your notes in the description box. Thank you so much again. Have a beautiful rest of your day, of your week, and speak to you all soon. Okay, bye.
Mhm.